This video is sponsored by ClickUp. Picture this, a world powered by nothing but wind and solar, electric vehicles with endless range. Sounds like a dream, right? But there's just one problem. To achieve that dream, we're going to need a better way to store all that energy and distribute it efficiently. So far, the solution has been batteries, but one technology that's gained a lot of hype is the supercapacitor, particularly supercapacitors that utilize a new material called graphene. Until recently, this technology wasn't widely available. With graphene supercapacitors gearing up for their commercial debut, it's worth exploring what they are, how graphene factors in, and what this could mean for both grid energy storage and individual applications. So what are supercapacitors? Well, I'm glad you asked. When it comes to energy storage, we typically think of batteries, which rely on a chemical reaction between the cathode and anode and an electrolyte. Batteries are great for storing lots of power compared to their weight, their gravimetric energy density, or specific energy. But while batteries have high specific energy, they have a lower power density, how much energy they can discharge per battery unit. This is why they're so great for EVs, where you typically don't need rapid bursts of power, but steady power for longer range. But batteries can also take a long time to charge, and those charge-discharge cycles generate heat, which leads to degradation. So what if we want to store and release energy rapidly? Well, this is where capacitors come in. Capacitors are similar to batteries in that they're both ways of storing energy. But capacitors have some very fundamental differences. Capacitors have two conductor plates, usually made out of aluminum, separated by a ceramic or glass insulator, called a dielectric, that collects positive and negative charges. Unlike batteries which store energy chemically, capacitors store electricity statically, basically capturing static electricity. Because the energy isn't transferred to another material, it stays electricity, it can move around much more efficiently. How efficiently? When it comes to power density, capacitors are roughly 100 to 1,000 times more efficient than batteries. This means if a lithium-ion battery has a power density of 100 watt-hours per kilogram, a capacitor would have a power density of roughly 10 to 100,000 watt-hours per kilogram. Think of a flash bulb in an old camera, which uses a lot of energy in a short period of time. Instead of using a battery, the flash uses a capacitor, which draws energy from the battery to charge slowly over time. Then when filled and ready, it can discharge instantly nearly and power that big bright flash we're all accustomed to. Without a capacitor, the battery could only power a flash so bright and it wouldn't be the same. And since capacitors don't use chemical exchanges, they don't heat up the way batteries do, meaning they don't degrade as quickly. A 3-volt capacitor will stay a 3-volt capacitor even after hundreds of thousands of cycles. Now, where capacitors utterly pale in comparison to batteries is in energy density. Tesla's current Model 3 cells hold about 260 watt-hours per kilogram, whereas dielectric capacitors have energy densities less than 1 watt-hour per kilogram. A standard laptop battery weighs about 1 kilogram. For a capacitor to store the same amount of energy as a laptop, it would need to weigh 260 kilograms, about 573 pounds. That's some laptop you'd be lugging around. Now, a supercapacitor sits somewhere between a standard capacitor and a battery. They use plates and dielectric, but they also use an electrolyte. Ions build up around the insulator, creating a double layer of charge. The plates are also carbon-coated, which increases the surface area. Supercapacitors also have a much smaller distance between the metal plates, around 10 to 100,000 times shorter than a standard capacitor. That smaller distance leads to a larger electric field. Keep this in mind for later. Basically, these distinctions mean more energy storage. Compared to a standard capacitor, a supercapacitor can store up to 28 watt-hours per kilogram, 28 times more than a standard capacitor. And while that still doesn't match a lithium-ion battery, it's getting closer. And in some cases, it may make more sense to use a supercapacitor over a battery. For example, supercapacitor-powered electric buses are very common in China. The buses may not have anywhere near the range of an EV, but they don't need to. They can simply go 1 or 2 stops and then recharge in a matter of minutes, then be on their way, similar to the gyrobus, which we covered in a recent video. Check it out here. They're also used in grid-level renewables. Supercapacitors show up in wind turbines to help control wind pitch. They're also great at helping stabilize energy delivery during peak periods. Anywhere that benefits from large bursts of energy in a short period of time, really. And while scale may be an issue for things like phones, batteries, and EVs, for grid storage, it's really not. You could have fields full of massive supercapacitors out in the middle of a solar or wind farm, and it wouldn't really matter that they take up a ton of space. And since supercapacitors are carbon-based, they can take the strain off the supply chain for elements like lithium, nickel, and cobalt. Remember, diversifying our energy storage materials is a really good thing. And this is where graphene comes in. But before we get into that, let me take a minute to give you a behind-the-scenes look at how we make our videos and talk about our sponsor this week, ClickUp. When I went full-time on YouTube, I didn't understand how difficult it was going to be to manage a team. ClickUp is the modern productivity platform that helps you manage whatever you're up to. Maybe it's your business or a side hustle. We're even starting a new ClickUp space for our family to track all of our home to-dos and wish lists. Before, we used to use Google Docs for writing scripts and Trello for tracking progress and a different calendar for keeping track of it all. With ClickUp, we can actually bring it all together in one place. It's packed with features and customization options that no other productivity tool has, so you can work the way you work best. Here's the task for this video. I assigned it to Juan to finish the video editing, but then he had the nerve to assign me 2 subtasks. A CEO's job is never done, but it's self-fulfilling, finishing a task and moving it into the completed column. The Kanban board view and the calendar view are the 2 views I use most. Plus, as the head honcho, I love creating dashboards to get an overview of how everyone is doing. Go to clickup.com, use code 2BIT to get 15% off ClickUp's massive, unlimited plan for a year, meaning you can start reclaiming your time for under $5 a month. Graphene comes from graphite, that stuff inside pencils. Graphite is an allotrope of carbon, having the same number of atoms but arranged differently, giving it a distinct property. Graphite typically has a 3-dimensional crystalline structure. Graphene has a single 2-dimensional, single atom layer thick hexagonal honeycomb shape. Why does this matter? The structure allows for the atoms to form strong covalent bonds. As a result, graphene boasts a tensile strength of 130 gigapascals, 100 times stronger than steel. Yet it also remains incredibly flexible. This unique atomic structure also allows the electrons to move around more freely, making graphene insanely good at conducting both heat and electricity. Because graphene is so thin and conductive, it's an excellent candidate to take supercapacitors to the next level. So remember earlier when we said supercapacitors have a shorter gap between the plates, allowing them to have more static charge? Well, typically, as we mentioned, those plates are made out of aluminum. You can picture like aluminum foil. And that may appear to be really thin to our eyes, but when we get down in the microscopic level, you can see it's actually pretty thick. Now compare that to graphene, which has a thickness of only 1 atom. Now, in that same amount of space, we can fit hundreds of thousands more of those gaps, which in turn means more energy storage. The main reason we haven't seen graphene supercapacitors before is that age-old question and issue of making them economically sound to mass produce. And this is where skeleton technology is making a seismic leap forward. This European tech company based in Estonia, a country I highly recommend you visit, has found a way to break that cost barrier. How do they do it? By using what's called curved graphene, which essentially uses crumpled up sheets of graphene. The exact process is a pretty heavily guarded company secret, but suffice it to say it has brought the cost down so much that they're just about ready to hit the market. How does this technology stack up? Their current 3-volt ultracapacitors have a specific energy of 11.1 watt-hours per kilogram, with a specific power of 28.8 kilowatts per kilogram. Now again, that may not sound like a lot, especially when you compare it to a battery, but the company says by using graphene, they've improved their technology by about 72%. Now, you won't see these supercapacitors replacing lithium-ion batteries anytime soon. So in that sense, they may not totally change the energy game the way some have prophesized. But that doesn't mean they can't have a major impact on many of the technologies you're using today. Skeleton Technologies offers curved systems for electric trains throughout Europe that can recover up to 30% electricity depending on whether the train is used as a long-distance train or a full-stop commuter train. This means cheaper shipping and public transportation. Supercapacitors could also be used for low-voltage situations in your EV, like your lights, power, autonomous vehicle, computers, AC, and even other functions. Taking the load off your car's main battery could theoretically increase range between 10 and 15%. For Model S with 400 miles of range, that could add another 60 miles, 20 miles more than the average American's daily commute. But when it comes to EVs, the real value of a supercapacitor is in energy generation during braking. If you own an EV, if you've ever driven a car that has one pedal driving, if you get off the accelerator pedal, that's pretty much max regen. That is the maximum amount the car can recharge your battery pack to. And it's pretty good, but it's not like slamming the brakes, right? If a car pulled out in front of you, you'd slam the brakes and use your normal mechanical brakes. Imagine if you had a 3 or 4 kilowatt hour ultracapacitor on board that could charge and discharge at ludicrous levels and save that energy. Think about the applications for EVs in races like Formula E, where you're stopping and going constantly at full speed. It's pretty exciting, and there's a ton of applications for them. Supercapacitors could also help you with rapid acceleration, like your Tesla Model S's ludicrous mode. Typically, to achieve those quick bursts of power, you need a larger battery pack. But doing so also stresses the battery, which is why Tesla doesn't recommend using ludicrous mode all the time. Pairing a supercapacitor with a Tesla battery could also help your vehicle accelerate really quickly without the added battery strain, preserving its lifespan. Again, the racetrack situation, right? That's a perfect use case for this. But the applications don't end with vehicles. As we mentioned, supercapacitors are also already in use in grid-level renewables. But what about your home solar? Intermittency can wreak havoc on batteries, as fluctuating outputs can interrupt battery charging and discharging. High energy demand in short periods of time can seriously impact the life of a home battery. Installing a supercapacitor run in parallel with a home battery system could help reduce stress on a battery by allowing sufficient energy in a short amount of time and leveling those peak power requirements. Supercapacitors could also make home solar systems more efficient, allowing storage of more precious sunlight in a shorter window of time. One study suggests that adding a small, fast-responding storage device to your solar system could increase energy efficiency by as much as 83% on a sunny day and up to 114% on a cloudy day. This could also help reduce the battery size. Since supercapacitors can share some of the power load, this could bring down the home battery system cost while also increasing battery life, making home energy storage systems more cost-effective in the long run. So will graphene supercapacitors be the game-changing technology that they were all projected to be? Well, the jury is still out on that. For one, Skeleton Technologies has to prove that they can manufacture graphene at scale. We know how to produce graphene, but what we don't know how to do is produce it in the kind of volume and quantity to bring graphene prices down low enough, because the applications for graphene are far beyond supercapacitors. But that will be their biggest challenge. And until they've completely figured that out, which really nobody else has, that will always be that risk for this company. Now, I know most of the technology that we talk about on this channel tends to be 5, 10, sometimes 20 or 30 years away from hitting the market. But thanks to Skeleton Technologies, graphene supercapacitors are about to be on the market like this year or next. So they're right on the horizon. And how much they can produce and in what quantity remains to be seen. So where do you think supercapacitors could thrive? Do you think the wait for a commercial application for graphene has been worth it? Sound off in the comments below. All right, that is a look at the graphene supercapacitor. This is pretty exciting stuff. And in summary, TLDR, they're not as energy dense as batteries, but they're dirt cheap to produce if we can get the graphene part sorted. And they don't really degrade because there's no chemical reaction, so they can charge and discharge almost instantly. So anytime you would need that sort of thing, they might make a ton of sense. All right, I'm Two Bit da Vinci. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.